Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Assembly Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate Committee on Finance. Committee Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Senators Buck, Canizaro, Wynn, Scheibel, Stone, Taylor, Titus, Dondero Loop, Assembly Members Anderson, Backus, Brown May, Dickman, Hafen, Hibbets, Howdigi, Koenig, Mosca, O'Neill, Torres Fawcett, Watts, Yeager, and Chair Monroe Moreno.
And I am here. Will you please mark members present as they arrive? We're at that time of session where members are making bill presentations and other committees. Today, committee, we will have a presentation regarding the governor's recommendation for statewide inflation, the enterprise information technology services rates, the statewide cost allocation plan, the attorney general's cost allocation plan, and other internal services fund rates and changes to fringe benefits. And then we will have a discussion about our committee organization, and we will end with public comment. If you'd like to call in for public comment, our number is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID for today is 87888-423695, and then please press pound. I'd like to ask everyone to silence their electronic devices. Members will be using their laptops to follow along with the meeting. Please don't take their work on their computers as inattentive or disrespectful, but they will be working. So with that, we will get started, and we will invite our GFO to the table. Are those yours? Good morning. You can start whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members. I'm Tiffany Greenemeyer, the director for the Governor's Finance Office, and here next to me is Curtis Palmer. He's the deputy director for the Governor's Finance Office. And here we're going to talk about the statewide decision units. Today's presentation will discuss the statewide inflation, employee fringe benefit rates, statewide cost allocation plans, and OCIO technology service rates. And then at the end, we can pause for any questions, and I do want to let you know I have phoned a friend. Next slide. M100 decision unit is used during the governor's recommended phase to adjust state-related service costs. This slide indicates services and projected rates, such as personnel assessment, payroll assessment, attorney general, basically all internal service rates. Next slide. This is a continuation of the internal service rates. Next slide. This slide is the Office of Chief Informational Officer Technology Service Rates. The bottom two are infrastructure and security, which those two rates are based on FTE. Next slide. The next slide is M300. Decision units are used for employee fringe benefit rate adjustments. This slide shows the change to both active and retiree group health insurance and unemployment insurance. Next slide. This slide represents the public employee retirement system. Then the next slide is workers' comp, labor relations assessment, and employee bond insurance. And with that, I can stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you for the brief overview. We do have a few questions, and we're going to start our questioning out with Assemblymember Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. So my questions have to do with the vehicle liability insurance, which is GL 7059. It looks like it's being, what factors are contributing to that being increased from 342.91 per vehicle to 590 per vehicle? It looks like there's a big difference between 2025 and 2027.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. I will call up Daniel Marlowe to answer this question.
Good morning. Daniel Marlowe, Administrator, Administrative Services Division, Department of Administration. The vehicle liability is within the Attorney General's office, and similar to the other kind of liability and insurance areas, that's looked at not only with the state of Nevada with our claims, but globally. So they look at all public entities and the risk within that.
Just to piggyback off that, when you say they look at all liabilities, can you expand upon a little bit more of that? I know that for me, my auto insurance skyrocketed from when I moved into the state of Nevada. Is that because of accident rates, theft rates? Do you know what all goes into that?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. This on the liability side, so this is the claims that have been on this policy within the state of Nevada. So if we damage somebody's personal car, but within kind of every state and the lawsuits that have come out of that, there's been a lot of kind of extreme liability payments that have happened within the nation as a whole for these payouts.
Assemblymember Brown-May?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I had this conversation with another entity this morning relative to vehicle insurance rates, and I'm curious. The Attorney General's office oversees this, but I'm curious to know, is there a person that is looking at all of the state vehicles to ensure that we're utilizing them to their highest need? Mileage, vehicle miles driven, right? Are we insuring vehicles that we don't need to insure? That's just one. I don't expect you to have the data relative to that. However, it would be really good to look at to make sure that we're spending money where we need to spend money and not insuring vehicles that we don't need to insure. However, my question is really about the rentals. It looks like the vehicle rental rate on a monthly basis is proposed to increase, but the rate on a daily basis is a recommended decrease. Can you talk to that?
Daniel Marlowe again for the record. I'll answer partially both questions. Number one, for the fleet vehicles, that's within Administrator Burgess's authority to be reviewing the usage of the vehicles, both miles and days driven, for the appropriate monthly rental of those vehicles, and then redistributing as needed. So that's within his purview. In terms of the rental rates for the daily versus the monthly, there's kind of two aspects of that. Number one, with the governor's recommended budget, we are proposing an all-inclusive rate instead of charging the mileage separately, kind of going with industry standard, but then we can also bill our monthly rates immediately instead of waiting for all the self-reporting, so we can increase that cash flow and potentially decrease that reserve need for holding that. Secondly, looking at that, we have approximately, and I have the numbers here, approximately 100 vehicles that are in the short term pool, and then over 1,200 vehicles in the monthly pool. So when we divide the overall cost between the number of vehicles, especially category 10, which is the vehicle operations, which includes the petrol, the gasoline costs, that's a primary driver in those costs. So that's 7% of the vehicles. But in terms of the miles driven, it's only about 3% of the miles driven. So most of those costs actually shift over appropriately to those monthly vehicle costs. The overhead costs within the fleet operation are also driven by the direct labor percentage, direct labor dollar percentage. So we look at the number of employees that are assigned their work is for their percentage of work as short-term or long-term vehicles, and that's about 6% of the direct labor that's assigned to the short-term vehicles. So then you take all the overhead, and only 6% goes to the daily rentals.
Thank you for that detail. That was very well done. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Chair Dondero Loop.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation this morning. When we started out on your slide, you talked about the liability insurance being the $497 in 2026, and then the $498 and 46 cents in 27. Then you provided revised rates, I believe, in the middle of February, and those became $588.94 in 26 and $590.10 in 27. Can you give us the overview on the difference there? Because the revised rates would result in some additional funds.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Sorry about that. I didn't realize that we had a difference, revised rates. The AG's office is not here to testify to that, so I can get you the information.
Thank you very much. Yes, that would be great, because I believe the revised rates might result in almost $2 million in a fiscal year for the difference. So we would appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for asking for that clarification. Next up, we have Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the buildings and grounds, the rent assessment. So it looks like the past legislatively approved amount was 94 cents per square foot. Now we're up to $1.81 per square foot, so almost double. Can you explain why we've seen that rate go up so significantly?
Daniel Marlowe for the record, and this is in relation to the B&G rental rate. Basically, their expenses have doubled with the new buildings coming online and the operational costs within that, the utilities, janitorial, landscaping, and included in that is last session, the 94 cents was I'll say artificially low, in that we knew going in to the biennium that our reserve level was not going to be at the target level. And instead of recuperating that within the current biennium, 24-25, we kept that rental rate at the 94 cents. So we're recuperating that loss as well. We had some significant work programs this in 24 and in 25, and so we're recuperating that as well.
Thank you. So I guess I have a couple of quick follow-ups. So one is the new space that the state has moved into twice as expensive, or is part of this related to some of the work that has been done to get the buildings to the point where folks can move in? So do you see that that this rate is going to potentially go down? And you also mentioned reserves. I have a follow-up on that. But do you see that this rate may go down in the future, or is this what the rate that we're looking at with the move to the new buildings moving forward?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. I anticipate that the rates would go down slightly. I wouldn't say that these buildings are necessarily more expensive. However, with these buildings, we did have a philosophical change in process where we maintained the janitorial and landscaping contracts, whereas historically, especially up north, we maintained that in-house. And I know CIO Rob has testified numerous times on the state of our buildings and our grounds because of that. So that's part of that cost. But I would anticipate our current calculations with all the changes that are happening with legislation right now are slightly lower than the GovRec published rate. So I'd expect that to be kind of our potentially ongoing standard. Of course, in the future, as utility costs increase, as contracts increase, as employees get cost of living adjustments, that's all going to increase as well.
Okay, and then finally, you mentioned the reserve levels and essentially some adjustments to that. Do you have any concern about potentially accumulating excess reserves as a result of this current rate?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. I do not have any concerns for excess reserve in this budget account. And the allowable amount under the US HHS standard is 60 days. We are not even close to that for this budget account. In addition, we are reviewing and having discussions with LCB staff on potentially lowering reserve days due to a change of internal processing of billing claims and assessments.
Thank you so much. Senator Taylor, do you have a question?
Yes, I do, Madam Chair. Thank you so much. Good morning, and thank you for the thorough but brief presentation. I want to follow up a little bit from the questions from my colleague, Assemblymember Watts, but this time I want to talk a little bit about the infrastructure, right? About the infrastructure assessment. It's gone up quite a bit from last session. If you look at previous session, it was just over about $308, and then fiscal year, the first fiscal year 26 is $557, and then 27 is $534. That also creates quite a bit of revenue. Can you talk us through that a little bit?
Daniel Marlowe for the record. I'm assuming that we're discussing the OCIO infrastructure assessment? Yes. Perfect. Yeah, so the infrastructure assessment, I would say there's kind of two main drivers of that, and we have the Office of the Chief Information Officer here that can fill in if needed. One of the drivers in that is that the OCIO did a labor study, and this was the first labor study that they've done in several years, if not for the immediate past, to actually determine where employees work, what products that they do their work on, and that really has kind of shifted the landscape a little bit in the rates. The other aspect are the projects and the enhancements that we have been doing in the past biennium and in the upcoming biennium for those enhancements in the landscape that we provide that information service and the security in that as well. As CIO Galuzzi said multiple times, that information security is not just the charge of budget account 1389. So 1385, the computing facility, has a large charge in that, and that drives several of the costs as well.
Good morning. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi. I just kind of wanted to double down and then add on just a little bit to that response from Administrator Marlowe. One of the other changes that we did, and kind of the genesis of those changes. So we worked with LCB audits over the past interim, and a couple of their recommendations were some drivers for some of the changes that you're seeing in our rate calculation. First major change was we consolidated the rate in which we calculate our help desk. So our 24/7 service desk, which supports all executive branch entities across the state. At one point, it was broken out between just law enforcement entities paying a rate for the after-hour service and other non-law enforcement entities paying for a separate service desk rate. And so one of the recommendations that we got from the LCB audit team is that we consolidate that rate into one, because the after-hours crew is actually working on other budget accounts as well, because they weren't getting calls for the entirety of their shift. So we followed that recommendation, and that's what we're seeing here, is that those costs had shifted into the infrastructure rate, and so we saw an increase there in that cost pool. Other drivers, like Administrator Marlowe was discussing, was just a rebalancing of a lot of the labor allocation, because we finally were able to do a legitimate quantitative analysis doing a labor allocation. And so we did see some shifting in our labor allocations because we were able to do that time study. And so that's why we're seeing a little bit of shift there.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being the phone a friend to come down. So let me kind of put this in layman's terms. So basically, as you put all that together, is it costing more to deliver the same service? Is that what I'm hearing, or did I not hear that correctly? It is Monday.
I completely understand. For the record, Timothy Galuzzi, while some services are more expensive because labor rates have gone up, and labor is one of my primary drivers for the services that I provide, and while we are absolutely and incredibly thankful for the hard work that this body has done in order to ensure that our employees are compensated at a much fairer level than they were previously, that does make it so my services are more expensive to deliver. But with that being said, a lot of what we are also seeing is a shift from one cost pool to another, from that 24/7 support that was kind of unfairly being paid by just DPS into a more fairly spread across rate that everyone was effectively leveraging.
I'm pausing because I see you got a note.
Oh, yes. So labor went up approximately 15% across all of my rates. So that's the note that I got.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Torres Fawcett.
Thank you. And I have a specific question in regards to the purchasing assessment from GL 7393. What factors contributed to the governor's recommending a rate holiday for the purchasing assessment in the 25-27 biennium?
Daniel Marlowe again for the record. The primary driver in the recommendation for a rate holiday is excess reserve. That is driven by the increase in the admin fee that we've seen over the last several fiscal years that started in 2017. The other aspect of that was the change. We had approximately $1 million earmarked in the current biennium to, renovate and fix the Las Vegas warehouse. We shifted plans late in the session, and we purchased a warehouse that is in the same kind of area as the rest of the buildings that we purchased in Las Vegas. So that $1 million that was in previous rates led to part of that excess reserve.
All right. Senator Nguyen?
Thank you. I was just asking fiscal staff some follow-ups on this, and I'll just ask you while I have you here. Can you describe what the GFO and the governor considered? What options that you all considered to mitigate these increases in PERS contribution rates when constructing the executive budget? It's such a significant, obviously, it's something that we all hear about. I know it's something you all hear about. So what other options and what other considerations when, coming up with this budget did you have for those increases?
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. So when it comes to the PERS rate, it's based off the actuarial report done by PERS. Sorry, I didn't realize we're going to have questions on the PERS rate. I would have had the director be here from PERS to answer these type of questions, so we can get back to you if you would like.
I think that would be helpful. I just have some questions about what considerations were. I know that we look at the actuarial, information and determining that, but I'm wondering if there was any other further conversations, just because it is such a significant increase that in some circumstances kind of defeats any COLAs, any other like raises that we had in the last biennium that have really it seems like, and especially certain agencies, led to lower vacancy rates throughout state agencies, which ultimately will help with the health of PERS. So I'm just curious to see what kind of other options and what other kind of conversations that you had when developing, I guess, this part of the executive budget. So if you could get some of that information, and I can follow up too as well.
Tiffany Greenmeyer for the record. Yes, I can get you that information. I personally don't know what happened during GovRec as to the conversations with the PERS department and the GFO, but I can get you, I'll find out the information for you as to what's taken into consideration. But you're right, the vacancy savings should be taken into consideration, and now it's lowered. So that should be part of that actuarial report. And it might have been at a different level than what it is now, because right now it's at 12%.
I guess I think we've had multiple presentations about the actuarial considerations. So I would just really like to know what other considerations and what other options you all had when developing this executive budget and this portion of it. Thank you.
Members, any other questions? I'm not seeing any. Maybe it was a long weekend or we're just all tired. Thank you so much for the presentation. I look forward to getting the additional information that was discussed here that you didn't have on you today. Thank you. Members, with that, we will move on to the next item of our agenda, and it's going to be a review of the committee organization. Our staff, Ms. Kaufman and Mr. Thorley, will review the budget work sessions process and the budget subcommittee, and then, of course, the joint full committee closing process. We'll give them time to get down to the table, and as soon as they're ready, they can begin.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Wayne Thorley. I'm the Senate Fiscal Analyst with the Legislative Counsel Bureau. As the chair mentioned, Ms. Kaufman and myself, we will be going over the processes that the committee, that the money committees are about to embark on. So today is day 57 of the legislative session, so we're almost at the halfway point. If you look at the 120-day calendar, it shows April 1st, which is tomorrow, as the day that the money committees start closing budgets. So we're at the point of session where the money committees are going to be transitioning from budget hearings, so from hearing presentations from state agencies on what's included in the governor's recommended budget for their agencies. Now we're going to transition to the budget closing and work session process. So this is really where we take over as fiscal staff. And we're going to walk through that. So I will go over the Money Committee work session process, and then I will hand it over to Ms. Kaufman, and she will go over the Money Committee budget closing process. Before I get into my portion, however, I'd just like to give an update on kind of the progress to date that you all have made. In the governor's executive budget, there are 481 funded budgets. 262 of those were assigned to the money committees for review, and then the remaining 219 are what we call staff closed budgets. The money committees, as of the end of last week, finished review of all 262 budgets. So you've had 262 budget presentations to date in session. And 53 of those were in joint full committee, 209 of those were in joint subcommittee. Some of you will be involved in some work sessions, and the work sessions in the money committees are a little different than work sessions in policy committees. So we wanted to go over what that process looks like. Not all of you probably will be involved. The work sessions for this session are going to be, they'll be in either the Education Subcommittee or the Human Services Subcommittee. So if you don't sit on either of those subcommittees, you won't be involved in a work session, a budget work session this session. What the work session is for the money committees is it's an opportunity for you all to look at the larger or more complex budgets that might have multiple different closing options. And it's an opportunity for you all to give us direction as staff, so as we prepare the closing documents, to make sure that it includes the information that you all need to make informed decisions. And then it's helpful for us as staff because it kind of focuses the discussion and helps us prepare the closing document. Unlike policy committee work sessions where there's like a vote taken and there's action of the committee, there's no official action taken during money committee work sessions. Instead, it's an opportunity for us to get feedback from you all to see, again, what you want, what you're looking for during the closing of that particular budget. Working with the Money Committee chairs this session, the 3 budget work sessions have been identified, one of which has already taken place last week. So on Thursday last week in the Education Subcommittee, there was a work session on the pupil-centered funding plan and the account for state special education services. So that one already occurred. And then there's 2 more upcoming. On April 7th, so a week from today, next Monday, in the Education Subcommittee, there will be a work session on the Nevada System of Higher Education, dealing with options related to the new funding formula. And then on April 11th, so a week from this upcoming Friday, in the Human Services Subcommittee, there'll be a work session on the Aging and Disability Services Division, or ADSD, dealing with early intervention services. So those are the 3 work sessions, and I will now hand it over to Ms. Kaufman for her portion.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley. For the record, Sarah Kaufman, Legislative Council Bureau, Fiscal Analysis Division. As Mr. Thorley had indicated, I will be providing a review of the closing process. So the closing process is slightly different for the various budgets that are accounted for in the executive budget. Certain budget accounts are heard by the full committees, and others are heard through the joint subcommittees. Both full committee and joint subcommittees will be presented with various staff closed budgets. You may recall that the committee did receive a list at the very beginning of the legislative session that included those staff closes. These will be presented by our fiscal staff for your consideration, but you can, please feel free to provide or seek questions or ask questions during these times for these staff closes. During closings, accounts assigned to the full committee are closed completely during the full committee closings. This also includes the staff closed budgets that are presented to the full committees. I would point out that the staff closed budgets do not contain recommendations of significant policy changes or funding decisions, but they will require certain technical adjustments. So technical adjustments may include things such as quantity adjustments or changes to cost allocations. They may also contain issues related to correcting certain errors or omissions in the budget. And so these are all what we consider technical adjustments that don't necessarily have a significant fiscal impact or budgetary impact. Budgets closed in subcommittee will also be closed in full committee. Fiscal staff will also seek authority to make technical adjustments from the joint subcommittees. This authority actually allows us to make the final adjustments so that the adjustments can be reported to the full committees. Budget closings will begin in full committee, as Mr. Thorley indicated, April 1st, and in joint subcommittee on April 2nd. The subcommittee actions are considered in one motion for both houses. However, the two houses may make different decisions, and so those decisions will be brought back during a differences committee meeting where those are resolved. I would reiterate the importance of clearly identifying for the record the members who are making the motions as well as the motions that are being recommended. This is very important for our House staff who do the minutes. It's important for them to make sure that they provide an accurate account of the motion. Joint subcommittee actions are considered recommendations to the full committee, and they are not final decisions. The joint subcommittees may request to issue letters of intent, which express expectations for future actions by agencies, such as the process of implementing a funding decision, which was approved by the money committees. However, those letters of intent, again, are just recommendations from the joint subcommittees, and the full committees actually have the authority to issue the final letters of intent. Once the joint subcommittees make the closing recommendations for the budget account they review, the actions are reported by fiscal staff to the full committees, which then have control over the final closings. So once the full committees act on the closing recommendations for all of the state agencies and the budget differences are resolved, fiscal staff begin to compile the actions into 6 major funding bills, which are identified as the Appropriations Act, the Authorizations Act, funding for the K-12 funding bill, pay bill, the Capital Improvement Program bill, and the PEB bill. So with that, that concludes my overview with the closing process. I can pause for questions, Madam Chair, or if you'd like, I can proceed with a request for technical adjustment authority by the committee.
Members, do you have any questions before we move on? Yes, Assemblymember Dickman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you just go over the 6 bills one more time? I got about half.
Certainly. Assemblymember Dickman, those are the Appropriations Act, the Authorizations Act, K-12 funding bill, pay bill, the Capital Improvement Project bill, and the PEB bill.
Thank you, and thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, you can go ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So Mr. Thorley and I would like to request blanket authority from the committees to make technical adjustments related to the statewide decision units. These decision units that contain the internal service rates that were just discussed today. The budgets that are funded with these rates impact the majority of state budget accounts. The rates may fluctuate based on the Money Committee's decisions, and if a decision unit is not approved within a specific budget that is charged with internal service rates, then adjustment to the internal service rate may be necessary, affecting all of the contributing budget accounts. Therefore, fiscal staff requests authority to make technical adjustments to the statewide decision units, which are accounted for the majority of the accounts, to ensure that all costs align with the Money Committee's closing decisions for the budgets that are funded through these various internal service rates.
Members, any questions? Yes, Senator Titus.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for that overview. When you talk about technical adjustments, is there a range of numbers that would be appropriate for you to do that with versus when you need to really talk to us about it?
Madam Chair, through you to Senator Titus, technical adjustments are primarily non-budgetary policy issues. So for instance, if fleet services rates need to be adjusted based off of decisions that are made because, let's say, cars aren't approved for a certain agency, we would reduce those rates. And so we were just asking for that discretion to make sure that we can adjust those rates to account for the various actions that are being taken by the money committees. But there isn't necessarily a specific dollar amount that we have for technical adjustments.
Great, thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Members, any other questions? Okay, I am not seeing any. So given the information that you just provided in the question, and thank you, Senator, for the question, I'd accept a motion to give you the authority to make technical adjustments as needed to reflect the actions taken by this committee.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion from Vice Chair Dondera Loop, a second from Senator Titus. All in favor of the motion? Aye. I guess I should have said any discussion on the motion. So let's go back. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, not seeing any. Now, all in favor of the motion? Aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you so much for the presentation and for all the work you and your staff are doing. I know you guys are working 12 and 14 hours. We do appreciate it. All right, that was brings us up to the very last item on our agenda today, and that is public comment. If you are joining us, you'd like to make public comment, if you're here in Carson City, I invite you to the table here. I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. If you'd like to call in with public comment, our number is 888-475-4499. Our meeting ID is 87-888-423695, and then please press pound. Not seeing anyone coming to the table here in Carson City and no one at the table in Las Vegas. Broadcast, do we have anyone joining us on the phone line that would like to make public comment?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but we have no callers at this time.
All right, well, with that, this meeting is adjourned. You guys can get a little rest before 4. Get ready for your bills. So we will see you, floor, and we'll see you all tomorrow morning. This meeting's adjourned.